game is perfect, but it sure is frustrating when developers and publishers simply ignore fan complaints when working on the sequel. While fans can certainly get excessively militant about minor nitpicks, they should still be the first port of call when looking to improve the next game, because who knows better than those that spent top dollar on the previous release? From adding much requested fast travel to diversifying the playable characters, introducing more accessible gameplay, and even scaling the scope back from its bloated predecessor, these 10 upcoming games all look to be addressing one of their predecessor's biggest problems head-on. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 9 video game sequels that have already fixed fan complaints. Number 9. Fast Travel. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Though Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was largely well received, there were some nagging complaints, one of which was that the game desperately needed fast travel. Jedi Fallen Order's Metroidvania-inspired layout encouraged players to explore the game's various worlds as much as possible, but having to start from the beginning each time you touched down on a planet proved wearisome later on, especially as each world's enemies respawned every time you returned. A series of fast travel waypoints to simply get to a specific point on the map and also return to the ship when you're done would have massively cut down on the busy work. Thankfully, these complaints were vocal enough that Respawn decided the sequel would indeed have a fast travel option. The game's director, Stig Asmussen, recently confirmed that the sequel will not only feature point-to-point fast travel to cut down on the listless backtracking, but also rideable creatures to make traversing the game's maps faster. You'll love to see it. Number 8. A female protagonist. Grand Theft Auto 6. As peerlessly, brilliantly crafted as the Grand Theft Auto games are, fans have been begging Rockstar for years to give them a female protagonist, because as much as the GTA franchise started life as an exercise in hypermasculine wish fulfillment, women love blowing shit up too. Last summer, reports emerged that Grand Theft Auto 6 would indeed feature 2 protagonists, a male and a female, in some sort of Bonnie and Clyde arrangement. This was then confirmed by the unprecedented gameplay leaks of the game late last year, which showed off a playable Latina woman referred to as Lucia in the footage. Given that GTA has been routinely raked over the coals for containing sexist content, GTA 6 should mark a more inclusive bent for the franchise, yet without losing its barbed satirical edge. It only took Rockstar about a quarter of a century to get it done, but if you want to commit some petty and not so petty crimes as a woman, your time's come. Number 7. A more newbie-friendly control scheme. Street Fighter 6. Street Fighter V received mixed reviews from fans for a multitude of reasons, with many noting that the fighting game was extremely uninviting to those new to the series. While most people could jump into earlier Street Fighter games and have a blast of a time just by mashing buttons, Street Fighter V was a lot more demanding of you actually mastering its unwieldy controls. That made executing combos and special moves a chore for the uninitiated. It doesn't help that the game's tutorialization is atrocious, considering the many mechanics you'll need to learn in order to have even the faintest fighting chance while playing online. But Capcom has evidently heard the vocal complaints from beginners loud and clear, as the upcoming Street Fighter 6 will introduce a modern control scheme intended to cater to those new to the series. This control setup features simplified inputs for special moves, meaning you'll no longer need to memorize button combos to execute awesome attacks, and it'll also allow players with accessibility issues to better enjoy the game. But of course, players who still want that challenge can opt to use the classic controls instead, because aren't options just a wonderful thing? Number 6. Using the Switch to its full potential. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Fans are not remotely happy that the upcoming new Legend of Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom, will be charged at a premium price point that's $10 more than expected. But on the flip side, Tears of the Kingdom will be the first Zelda game to properly make full use of the Nintendo Switch's admittedly aging hardware, after Breath of the Wild failed to take complete advantage of it. As impressive as Breath of the Wild was, a lot of fans complained that the game was held back because it also needed to release on the doomed Wii U, so it technically couldn't be as impressive on the new hardware when it had to run on the old hardware. But with Tears of the Kingdom being a Switch exclusive, there's no such concession, and from the gameplay footage released so far, one of the most noticeable technical improvements compared to its predecessor is the game's draw distance. Hyrule's wide open vistas look considerably more vast. Given that these games are all about exploring a lush, wondrous land, it'll certainly aid the player's already palpable immersion, and ensure that nobody can say the game isn't making the absolute most of what the Switch has going on under the hood. Number 5. Ditching Telltale's dated engine. The Wolf Among Us 2. There's no denying that Telltale Games reinvented the interactive adventure game in a major way, aided in large part by the development of an engine, the Telltale tool, which was used to develop every single game the studio produced up to their surprise 2018 bankruptcy. Yet after just a few years of using this tool, the cracks began to show, and it became very evident that it was just too basic and taped together to support the ideas that the studio had. This resulted in most episodic releases containing frustrating bugs and dated janky gameplay, and that absolutely included one of their most acclaimed releases to date, 2013's fairy tale-inspired adventure, The Wolf Among Us. But with Telltale being relaunched in 2018, the decision was finally made to toss out the Telltale tool and create all future games on Unreal Engine. The first game to benefit from this change will be The Wolf Among Us 2, which should be a considerably slicker, less buggy offering packed with more creative and dynamic gameplay, free of the Telltale tool's stodgy restrictions. Number 4. Hugely improved animations. Dragon Age Dreadwolf. A consistent criticism of the Dragon Age games, despite how impressive they are in so many ways, has been their animations, dating all the way back from Dragon Age Origins in 2009. Even with Dragon Age Inquisition moving to the Frostbite 3 engine, one of the sequel's most persistent complaints was the horribly wooden character animations, both during gameplay and especially in cutscenes. Developer BioWare has openly spoken about the difficulties of using Frostbite to develop games, even calling the process of making Inquisition painful. Though for the upcoming follow-up, Dragon Age Dreadwolf, it looks like the studio has a firmer handle on things. The new Dragon Age game will still be using Frostbite, but given how impressive Anthem looked, to say nothing else of the rest of Anthem, the prior issues shouldn't exist. This was backed up by a recent alpha gameplay leak, which revealed that Dreadwolf's animations are massively improved from Inquisition, with the series' infamous stiffness nowhere to be seen. Thank God. Number 3. Faster gameplay. Hollow Knight Silksong. Hollow Knight is one of the most acclaimed video games from the last decade, though it still has its issues, with a lot of players complaining about the speed of the player character compared to the enemies. Given that Hollow Knight is already an intensely difficult game, the player's sluggish locomotion abilities, combined with the extensive amount of backtracking, can often make it feel like a game that doesn't really respect your time, as excellent as it is. But the impending sequel, Hollow Knight Silksong, will address this head-on, given that new protagonist Hornet can move much faster and has a more diverse suite of traversal capabilities. Dashing will allow Hornet to move considerably faster than the Knight from the first game, in turn hopefully ensuring that combat feels fairer and navigating the game world is less of a chore. With so many video games coming out, there's only so much that we can play, so any game that respects our time is a good one in our books. Number 2. It's smaller than Valhalla, Assassin's Creed Mirage. As successful as the Assassin's Creed franchise's pivot to open-world RPGs has been, there are many fans who feel that the recent entries into the series are simply too darn big for their own good. After all, there's a limit on what any one person can explore, and given how blatantly Ubisoft had padded out the series' giant game maps with copy-pasted buildings and repetitive tasks, there's a point where the law of diminishing returns surely kicks in. Not everybody who plays these games wants to spend 50 to 100 hours getting through the main campaign, and Ubisoft apparently agrees. The studio recently revealed the next game in the series, Assassin's Creed Mirage, will actually scale things back somewhat. The spin-off is opting for a more intimate approach after receiving feedback that many players were exhausted with the huge scale approach of the last few titles. Mirage will feature a more linear, story-based gameplay loop that reduces those RPG elements somewhat. This will hopefully end up striking a winning balance between the more threadbare earlier Assassin's Creed games and the more bloated excessive titles of late. Number 1. Vastly improved physics. Forza Motorsport. The Forza franchise is basically the king of the racing genre, whether you're craving the shrewd simulation of the mainline Forza Motorsport games or the frothy fun of the Forza Horizon spin-off series. Yet there's been a pretty consistent criticism at the heart of many Forza Motorsport titles, and that's that the vehicular controls don't feel quite right and could use some serious finessing. The series has constantly tried to find a compromise between simulation and more casual, friendly arcade-style gameplay, the payoff being that the cars don't fully feel like they handle as real cars would. Many fans even felt that Forza Motorsport 7's physics and handling marked a step up from the 6th game, but for the next installment, developer Turn 10 has revealed that the physics engine will receive a massive overhaul. They've even promised that the upcoming refinements are more comprehensive than the ones they implemented for the last 3 games combined, so running your car around the track should feel much better than ever before. That's the end of our list, but do let me know down in that comment box if you can think of any other video games that fixed fan complaints. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonnell, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.